Let's review our Sunday school lesson for today. We are in the spring quarter for March, April, and May, entitled Jesus Calls Us. And we are looking at Jesus' earthly ministry and connecting it to the birth of the early New Testament church following Jesus' death, resurrection, and his ascension. So we're going to be looking at the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Then we're going to be looking at the book of Acts. We're coming today to the end of unit number 1 for the month of March, entitled Called from the Margins of Society. And it is a look at Jesus' ministry and how he was one who disregarded artificial social and societal barriers to reach people who were on the margins. Our lesson for today is lesson 4, the last lesson of this first unit for March the 26th, 2023, entitled One with Mental Illnesses. And our printed passage is Mark chapter 5, verse 1 through 13, and verse 18 through 20. Last week we talked about the Samaritan woman and people who may be caught up in various type of sins and activities, and how God still can use them. But this week, we're going to look at someone with mental illnesses. And what a beautiful story this is. We all are familiar with this story in which Jesus comes into the region of the Gadarenes. And when he comes into the regions, he's met by a man named Legion, who's out in the tombs, crying, spending day and night cutting himself. And when he comes into contact with Jesus, Jesus sets him free from all of those unclean spirits in him and clothes him back in his right mind. And then at the end of this story, Jesus sends him back as a witness for him. What a beautiful story. And from this story, I just want to pull out a few things. Number one, our thoughts, and I'm talking about Christians, and I'm talking about just society in whole. Our thoughts concerning those with mental illnesses need to change. One of the issues is that for most people who are dealing with some type of mental illness, it is so much easier for us to treat them like this man Legion was treated, that we would simply label them quote unquote crazy and then push them outside of society with no help, no treatment, no rehabilitation, with nothing, but just push them out with a label. And so our thoughts concerning mental illnesses need to change. And we need to become more compassionate, more considerate, and more understanding of those who deal with different type of mental illnesses. And I mean all the mental illnesses, whether it's those who have anxiety illnesses, panic attacks, those who have mood disorders like depression and bipolar, those who have psychotic disorders like schizophrenia, hallucinations and delusions, those with eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia, those who have impulse or control addictions and different impulse disorders, who are unable to resist urges and impulses even if they hurt or harm them. And many of those may be drugs that people use. Personality disorders, whether antisocial, paranoid, or have multiple personalities. Obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, fear that causes them to do something over and over and over again. Or those who have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. All of these are mental illnesses. And what we have to embrace and begin to understand is that these are chemical imbalances in the body. And because they are chemical balances in the body, they can be helped with medicine. Now that leads me to my second thing. Mental illnesses need treatment and Jesus. So first off, if you're dealing with anything or you know somebody, go get help. We have got to get rid of this stereotype that we don't need counselors, or that we don't need doctors, or that we don't need counseling. Go get some help. And when you go get some help, not only do you get physical help like medicine, and you learn techniques and skills that you can do and things to avoid. Not only do you learn physical things, along with that treatment, get Jesus. Because not only is it a chemical imbalance, but it's also an unclean spirit that the Lord Christ does not want us to have. And so he is the one, as we see in our story today, who is able to free us from that type of unclean spirit that may have us bound. So as Christians and everyone is dealing with something, you need to combine your physical treatment also with spiritual treatment. You have to include Jesus in that thing. And it is Jesus who is able to free us from all of these things that may have us bound. And then I want to tell you that even with those who may be dealing with mental illnesses, as I come to a close, Jesus still wants to use them. He does not want us to push them out to society, to pass them by, to overlook them, or not care for them. He stopped and made a difference, and then use that person for a witness. So even if you yourself may be dealing with a mental illness, or you know somebody, listen, God can still use their life, and he desires to not only save them, but to have their life so turned around that they can go tell somebody else about what Jesus is able to do.